Zimmerman Library is the largest academic library at the University of New Mexico. And the library itself houses the Government Information Depository, the Center for Southwest Research, the University Archives, and other collections of material for the university. Over the last century, as Zimmerman has grown, collections have expanded in different places, and as collections expanded, they expanded to wherever there was open space. So fast forward after 20 years of that, and you've got collections that should be together that are now in 5 different locations, and in general there was no space. A lot of times when a big collection comes here, they've got to process all those manuscripts and index them. And there was no people space either. So there wasn't any storage space, there wasn't any people space, which made for a pretty difficult preservation environment for the library. Somebody needed to take a high-level kind of comprehensive look at where all the collections are, look at the space that the library has available for collection storage, and then figure out how to use that space most effectively. Our design team worked with the Zimmerman collection people and everybody who's involved in making this library work correctly to go through basically an audit or an analysis of how the library works, how collections are housed, how they move around, how they circulate. After a pretty long process of thinking through every space within the library, we started putting together space plans. The goal was to make new storage systems fit around what the library does. That way the library is not changing everything they do to try to make storage systems work, but we mold the systems to them. The librarians and the collection staff and the archivists, they know their collection like the back of their hand. They have it memorized. As all the collections grew organically, very valuable, rare books ended up in some of the worst places from a preservation standpoint. Zimmerman has what they call the tower, but all of these rare and valuable books are being stored there. And so one of the main objectives of the project was to get the rare book collection out of the tower and into the basement levels where environment can be controlled and where they can be used and seen. How do we put collections that are used the least in places like the tower? If you can design the systems so that the stuff that's used most is the quickest to access, every day that requires fewer steps for that employee to travel when they're pulling volumes. Many of the volumes, especially in the rare book collections, hadn't been touched in years. It's important when you're moving books that are rare or special in value that the people that touch them understand how to treat books. So we actually brought in book movers and relocation specialists from the East. You know, I think the archivists can feel good too that every book that moved was cleaned. Take a normal library where you have runs of shelving, and between each run of shelving you have an aisle space. Well, really, that aisle space gets used very little. It's kind of wasted space. So the idea between high-density mobile storage is you can take those shelving ranges, put them on wheels, leave space for one aisle, and then just move that aisle. So in essence, if you convert a library from static, standard library shelving to high-density mobile system, it's the equivalent of doubling the size of the library without taking any more square footage. The building itself presented a lot of challenges. The way the building is constructed doesn't allow the floor to be easily penetrated. About every mobile storage system in existence has to be anchored to the concrete because the shelves slide back and forth. Working with Spacesaver, a solution was developed called NovaRail. The great thing about NovaRail is that it uses a high-strength epoxy to secure to the concrete instead of anchors. So because we didn't have to penetrate, we could take small chunks of shelving, clear the area, install the rail, and because it didn't penetrate, we could put the rail exactly where it needed to be for the collection, not exactly where it needed to be for the building, which provided incredible flexibility. The systems are also designed from an archivist standpoint, meaning that all the materials like the steel don't off-gas and don't cause any damage long-term to any of the collections. Everything an archivist cares about is preserving that collection and then making it accessible for people to use, which is going to be critical because in the end it's about the $90 million rare book collection. It's about the government information depository. It's about all the stuff that has to be housed here. The project included, Spacesaver high-density mobile systems, and one of the great things about Spacesaver is it's very flexible in how it's designed. So we're able to design every system for the specific space and the specific area that it was going to be installed in. And in a lot of cases, we were able to design the carriage systems so that existing shelving could be reused and didn't have to be repurchased. So we were able, within the collections, to carve out secure space where there were particularly sensitive items that needed to be locked separately from the rest of the systems. We were able to put in special microfilm cases. We were able to put in special archive box storage for the archive boxes that the manuscripts come in. So there's a little bit of everything. The great thing was we could design it for what would be best for the operation of the library. Even details down to putting perforations in the end panels of the mobile system to let more air flow through the collection. It's a small thing, but that's the sort of thing that separates something that can store a manuscript for a long time with no adverse effects and something that you'd call a bad preservation environment. Before this project, Zimmerman Library was constantly struggling with using their collection spaces efficiently. After the project now, they've got growth space that they can accept new collections and process them and manage them and preserve them exactly the way they're supposed to be. So they're not having to kind of make do. By spending a lot of effort planning and then applying good project management principles, even the most complex projects can be accomplished on time and can ultimately greatly improve the way the collections are stored and the way the library runs.